I mean, this is the hilarious thing about the Occupy idiots. They're out there making a big fuss, and they're saying we want jobs commensurate with our education. Right now, they have jobs commensurate with their education. It's called sitting out on the street doing nothing with your life because you're a bunch of liberal arts morons. You got a degree in queer dance theory, and now you expect a $100,000 job somewhere. Sorry, ain't gonna happen.
If you got rid of all those things, if you got rid of government involvement, Bernie Sanders would still think that something was wrong if Bill Gates is earning a lot of money and somebody at the bottom is earning none.
Yeah.
He sees somebody in a room with $5 and somebody with $1, and he immediately says the guy with $5 must have stolen something from the guy with $1. Whereas I say I have no evidence of that until you show me that evidence. Maybe the guy with $5 produced more than the guy with $1.
It's what I like to call decision privilege. Right? It turns out that there is actual privilege in American society. But that privilege is not tied to color. It's tied to making good decisions. White are not genetically predisposed to making good decisions. Black people are not genetically predisposed to making bad decisions. The greatest decision privilege of all is growing up in a two-parent household. Right? If you decide to bring up your child in a two-parent household, you have given them the greatest step they will ever have on the road toward success in life. And this is true across races. The poverty rate in the black community, the poverty rate for families with two parents in the home is 7%. 7%. The poverty rate in the white community, if there's only one parent in the home, usually a single mother, is 22%. What happened to white privilege? Did it just disappear? Or does it turn out that if you have one parent in the home, it's a lot harder to raise kids than if you have two parents in the home? And it has nothing to do with white or black. It has nothing to do with white or black. There is never, right now, there are no white people in America, and historically speaking, generally too, there are no white people in America forcing a black guy to get his black girlfriend pregnant and then take off. That's just him being a douchebag.
Here are just some of the speakers slated for the DNC. Really, this is real. Sabrina Fulton, the mother of Trayvon Martin. The Democrats have tried to play Trayvon Martin's killing as a case in point of white police racism. There are only a few problems. First, the guy who shot him, George Zimmerman, was not white. Second, George Zimmerman was not a cop. Third, Trayvon Martin was, by all available evidence, sitting on top of George Zimmerman's prone body and slamming his head into the concrete when Zimmerman shot him. Zimmerman was not only acquitted of a murder charge, the Department of Justice couldn't find anything to charge him with either. Here's another one, Leslie McSpadden, the mother of Michael Brown. Michael Brown, you may remember, was a thug who strong-arm robbed a convenience store, then punched Officer Darren Wilson, tried to grab his gun and shoot him, and finally tried to charge the officer before being shot himself. That's true according to witness testimony. Even Holder's DOJ could not find something wrong with the shooting, which didn't stop the left from manufacturing from whole cloth a narrative of evil white police officers shooting black men surrendering by shouting, "Hands up, don't shoot."
How about combating actual acts of racism? How about singling out racism and then actually doing something about it, as opposed to doing this kind of Marxist newspeak in which we go through everybody's hidden actions? You know, I'm sensing a real sort of underlying, I don't know, racial bias to this whole segment. Robert, I find you to be racially biased. I find you to be insensitive, bigoted, and misogynist based on everything that you've said. It may be hidden. Maybe I can't detect it, but we all know it's there. So perhaps you should go through this program. At the end of the program, you will feel free. You'll feel better about yourself, and you'll feel more informed because after all, that's the purpose.
How about the not committing crimes privilege? There's another one of my favorite privileges, the not committing crimes privilege. It turns out that if you want to avoid jail, there's a real easy way not to do it. Right? There's a real easy way to avoid jail. It is called don't commit the crime, jackass.
Did you see the story that came out last week about how the government now came out and they said that bread, the salt content in bread is making people fat? Right?
Absolutely.
Well, who do you think has been pushing bread for the last 20 years? I did a piece on this. The food pyramid, the federally funded food pyramid, right? The bottom of that pyramid, grains, right? It's 6 to 11 servings of grains. And where does that come from? From the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which is doing kickbacks to the farmers in Iowa, right? So, I mean, they've been making us fat for 20 years, and they turn around and say, hey, by the way, you're getting fat because of what we told you. Now, how about we handle your health care? Or how about Gwen Carr, the mother of Eric Garner? Eric Garner, you may remember, was not murdered by the cops. He resisted arrest. He was placed in a submission hold by the cops. He then died of a heart attack because he was dramatically overweight. He had a long history of health issues ranging from diabetes to sleep apnea to asthma that was so bad he actually had to quit a city job. Garner certainly shouldn't have died over selling loose cigarettes, but blaming his death on cop racism is asinine. How about Maria Hamilton, mother of Dontre Hamilton? You haven't heard this name. It's not really a household name because Hamilton grabbed an officer's baton and hit him in the neck with it before the officer shot him. The officer was fired because Hamilton was a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. Here's another one, Lucia McBath, mother of Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis was murdered by Michael David Dunn, a white guy, at a gas station in Florida. Davis was playing his music loudly in the car. Dunn confronted him, then got a gun and shot 10 rounds into the car. Davis was convicted of first-degree murder. So what exactly is the problem with the criminal justice system or the cops?
All taxes are is a gangster shakedown. And so and that's all they are. And so we can all agree that some gangster shakedowns are worthwhile because we have to pay for police. But the idea that here's the problem with any sort of progressive tax. There are three, and this is just the general problem with progressive taxation. You have three people in a room. Two of them are not Bill Gates and one of them is. They vote 2-1 that they should take half of Bill Gates' wealth. Okay, this is a simplified version of American politics.
Yeah.
Here's my basic rule for all legislation and all taxation. If you pass this law, are you willing to shoot the person who disobeys? Because that's what the government is. The government is just a big shooting people machine. Right? That's what the government does. In whether you're talking national defense or the police, there are certain laws where you pass them and you say, if you disobey this law, and if you resist me with a gun, I'm willing to shoot you. So what laws are you willing to shoot somebody over? This seems to me a pretty good measure of, am I willing? So, for example, for taxation, yes. So the question is, are you willing to shoot people who don't pay taxes if those taxes go for the national defense that protects us all? The answer is yes, because if nobody pays that tax, then presumably everybody dies in some sort of terrorist attack. But if you're going to ask me, are you willing to pay a progressive tax for whatever stupid government bull they're pushing today? And am I willing to shoot somebody over that? No, I think the purpose of the tax is just as important as the percentage of the tax.
So is that
in your video where you debunk white privilege, you talk about how white privilege is a made-up term by privileged minorities. So I was wondering if you can elaborate on some of the privileges that you think minority groups have.
Okay, so in privileges in law, so when I say privilege, I'm actually going to talk about legal standing. Okay, so affirmative action is a privilege. Affirmative action is a privilege. Subprime mortgages designed to appeal to minority recipients without proper qualifications, that is a privilege. Now, those are a couple examples of privilege. Privilege would also be the police being told that they can't police in communities the same way they would in other communities because they don't understand the problems of minority communities. That's a privilege. By the way, these privileges are not helpful, but these are, as an overall matter, but it is certainly it's very difficult for me to see how it's not a privilege to get a lower score on the SAT than the Asian guy who's living in exactly the same circumstance. He gets penalized 50 points, you get 230 points on the SATs. That is definitionally a privilege. So there's one. Do you disagree?
Yeah, but I don't want to take up everyone's time, so I'm just going to let.
What an Orwellian speech. I mean, talk about a reversal of every term that Americans hold dear. Liberty becomes collective action. Absolutism is opposed to principle. Everything that he says was basically turning American history on its head. As it turns out, I also learned things about myself during that speech that I found educational. It turns out that if I oppose Obama, I hate women, I hate gays, I hate old people, I hate the disabled, and I'm also a denier of science. So I found out all those things today, and yet President Obama said that we are a united country. So in that way, it was a unique speech.
Even now, I'm hearing, Bernie will say, he talked to that guy at the town hall.
Yeah.
And the guy said, I earn $41,000 a year. And Bernie admitted, your taxes will go up. And then he explains, well, the health costs are going to go down or whatever, which may or may not.
Makes no sense. He says, I'm going to tax you $5,000 and you're going to get $10,000 back in medical service. What magical box did you make that happen in? Are there doctors in the back room there?
Well, that's funny, because when he said that, I was thinking, well, if you're healthy,
if the government's that good at things,
honestly,
I wish leftist solutions work because they're the easiest solutions in the world, right? It's a recession. Tax everybody at 100%, redistribute the wealth. In 2 days, the recession's over.
Yeah.
They don't work. They're crap. By the way, they're also immoral. How about Geneva Reed Veal? She's the mother of Sandra Bland. Remember, Sandra Bland committed suicide while in police custody. Rumors of an evil police murder and cover-up circulated on the net. There was no evidence to back any of it. All of these women are deemed mothers of the movement, although what the movement is remains unclear. There's actually one person who should speak, who's a mother of the movement, Cleopatra Pendleton Cowley, the mother of Hadia Pendleton. Pendleton, you may remember, was a 15-year-old girl who performed at events surrounding Obama's second inauguration, then was murdered by gang members in Chicago weeks later. But I doubt she'll target Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, for his failure to crack down on crime in the city. She's not going to blame the culture of gang violence fostered by the Democratic Party, which ignores single motherhood and cultural deprivation as rationales for violence. Probably she'll talk gun control.
In
we
our
both know
nuclei. Yeah,
chromosomes don't necessarily mean you're male or female.
Gender.
With gender
identity. Go ahead. No, so
especially, but even so, you have a thing like Klinefelter's syndrome. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you actually like to discuss the genetics? Or
well,
no?
no,
What
no.
are your genetics?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion. In my belief, there's something I like, and it's called science. And science suggests that if you have not a single cell in your body without a Y chromosome, except for your sperm cells, and if you still have all your appendages, And if you still have your twig and berries and all the rest of it, but you call yourself a woman, no. No, and this goes back to my feeling that your subjective view of yourself is completely irrelevant to me. I don't care what you think you are. I just care what you are. All right? We all know Caitlyn Jenner's a man, and we're sitting here pretending Caitlyn Jenner's a woman. And at one point I said to one of the guys on the panel, would you date Caitlyn Jenner? Right, you're a straight guy. Would you date Caitlyn Jenner? And the answer, of course, is no, because Caitlyn Jenner still has a penis. Okay? It's the most feminine penis you've ever seen. And it's... And so, you know, I say this, and microaggressions everywhere. And just as I say, microaggressions lead to actual aggression. So what happened is I said this, and this transgender guy sitting next to me, he grabs me by the back of the neck on national TV and says, if you don't cut that out, you'll go home in an ambulance, or I'll send you home in an ambulance. Which is weird, because ambulances don't go home. During the break, Zoe turned to me and said, I'll see you in the parking lot. They'd send security out to the outdoors with me. They'd send him to my car. He was threatening me on Twitter, saying he would curb stomp me, et cetera. Which I have to say is deeply unladylike behavior.